Hi, everybody. Welcome to our new episode. We are in the Northwoods of Wisconsin at our cabin. So that's what you're seeing in the background. So tonight we're going to continue part 2 of conscious awareness and the discovery and exploration of that. So really what we're talking about with all of this is being present. Being present. And how do you distinguish whether you're present or present, which gives you the power of conscious awareness, really leaves you in the driver's seat of your life versus being a reaction mode to your life. So welcome, Betty. Welcome to part 2 of our exploration of conscious awareness.
Yep. Pretty nebulous.
So
it's not easy. We're looking at this in 3 different sessions because no matter how much we talk about it, we're hoping that one of the approaches or the other will ignite something in each one so you really get what we're talking about being awake, being present, being with it. It's the only time you're really alive. The other time, the rest of the time, you're floating around with your imagination, thinking you're part of the scene that you're looking at, thinking that you're that two-legged animal you see in the mirror. And conscious awareness moves you out of that rut. So it's worth paying attention to. So anyway, that's one of the things we're talking about tonight.
yes. Okay. So what you also need to know is we're on cabin internet. So it may be kind of funky. So I'm kind of watching it to see if it goes well. So let's dive into this conversation. So one of the things we talked about after the last one was we talked about what's the access point for people to know if they're being consciously aware or if they're just being a reaction machine.
Okay.
Or let's say as a victim of the circumstances.
Go ahead, say that again, honey. I'm sorry.
Or so how do people know if they're tapping into conscious awareness or they're a reaction machine to what's happening in their life?
Okay. Most of the time they won't know the difference. That's really why we have problems. The time that I'm the most alert and the most aware is when something comes up that leaves me uncomfortable or leaves me wondering what's going on or uncertain, a problem of any kind, because otherwise I'm just going along with the general mode of the day. And I see, feel, hear, do, and say as others feel, see, hear, do, and say. And the thing that distinguishes me is when I'm consciously being myself. And, as I grew up, I'm sure that I thought that I was consciously being myself when I got to learn that my name was Betty and that I lived in a family with 4 children and, all of that sort of thing. I went to school. I thought that I was consciously aware. And I was aware of aliveness. I was aware that way. But when it came to being myself, I thought I had to pay a lot of attention to Betty. I had to have Betty do certain things, certain ways. I had to behave properly, all that sort of thing. And the thing that does is lock you into the belief that the thing you see when you look around you and look in the mirror and people acknowledge you, that thing is like having a little item in a Monopoly game that you can move around the squares and play the game with. Well, Betty is what I play the game with. But who I am is the thing that has Betty exist. So when you can become aware that that's the nature of being, that the thing you're looking at is really kind of an identifying language, like all the trappings of playing a game. It's the stuff that identifies for you that you exist, that stuff is going on, that action is present, etc. Does that get anywhere with you, Kim? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it does. It's when I'm a react. So what are the telltale signs? When I'm a reaction machine, I've got something I'm resisting, ignoring, putting up with, trying to change. I've got a judgment about the way it looks, shouldn't be the way that it is. Um, all those kinds of things, which set me on the road to fixing and changing.
Yeah,
And
and
it
the other
seems
thing
to
it does
me,
is have you believe that it's something separate from who you are.
right, but it seems to me that that in my life, if I look back, and I'm just looking for those telltale signs, when I look back, it's when I have stopped all my attempts to fix and change the situation, to do what I need to do to make that happen, to bring it in, to, shape it up, whatever it is, when I've done everything I can do, and none of that stuff has had the effect that I was hoping for, I give up. And it's not like I give up like resignation. It's like I say, you know what? I have done everything that's come up to do. I've done everything I can even think of. So if there's something I don't know, then let me find it, right? And in that moment, I sort of turn over my control of what I'm trying to do. And at that moment, I feel like that's where I am consciously aware. The other way that it would happen is if I was to pick up the phone and call you like a practitioner and just say, here's what's going on, and you get it. And then we have a conversation, and I can see in my saying about it all, I can go, oh, okay, I got it. I can see where like that. So there might
Yeah.
be something there, but.
Mrs. Laird used to make the statement once in a while. She would do that same thing, do everything she knew to do. And then she would say, I don't know. I don't know why it looks this way. God, take a hand. And she'd just back off and leave it alone. And it would, it would take care of itself.
Yeah.
Because the personal effort is what blocks the thing from just moving along and doing what it should to identify what's going on, called
Right.
the world walkthrough.
Right. And intuitively, what comes up are things like, well, I could try that, or there's a new avenue over here. Because it's all human footsteps, but it's like things show up that I hadn't considered when I open myself up to, well, I don't know. I don't know what the solution is.
And sometimes it looks like somebody walks through and says, oh, let's plug this in over here. And lo and behold, it all works.
Right.
Or, I've got 2 tickets to the symphony tonight. You want to go? And just getting me out of the rut of Betty and her same old, same old, same old is what takes to just let it go.
Right.
And being itself being is the only thing going on anywhere ever.
Yeah.
So the being that has Betty show up to play the game, that being is always present, but it can't get the message through to me if I'm really trapped in being Betty. It's going to be done this way. I know exactly what I want. It's got to look a certain way. Don't you interfere. You leave it alone. I'll have it. I'll manage it.
Right.
That kind of stuff.
Right.
That personal attachment to what's going on in your daily life limits what's possible for you.
Right. So I want to take a time out and just kind of let you guys know that we are sponsored by the Institute of Metaphysical Science. You can go check out the website at scientificmetaphysics.org, find out dates and times and events and things, as well as any materials that we cover here are also, most of them, available through the Institute and that website. So you can check that out. All right, so let's dive in here. Now, in your book, Mind is the Athlete, on page 141, and Mind is the Athlete is a book by Betty Albee, available at the Institute website or through Amazon or on Kindle or even on Audible. That's cool. All right, so what you said is what is assumed to be my conscious awareness and your conscious awareness is language defining the degree of ownership we accept of the world we are walking through. So let's look at that. So you bring up a whole new thing as the degree of ownership.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah. The world I walk through is my language, of my comfortable language, I might say, of where I'm standing and what I'm believing and what I'm accepting. And that's the only thing that ever gives me a problem. If I think that it isn't me, oh, well, that happened over there. That has nothing to do with me. Then I begin to narrow down the allness that being is, being me.
Right.
And when I narrow that down, I get lost in the shuffle of trying to fix all the human picture. Because when this one gets fixed, there's another one over here I got to fix, and there's another one over here, and tomorrow's going to be 10 more.
Right. So it goes into that never-ending spiral.
Right. And so we have this practice, I would say, in science of acknowledging the facts. Well, if I'm acknowledging the facts, they can't have anything to do with the language world I'm walking through, because they're not facts. They're identifying language saying, hey, Betty, this is what you think right now. This is who you think you are. This is how you're being. That's all it's saying.
Right.
Because it's a reporting, it's a feedback machine, my language world. But when I look at it as if it existed out there with a whole lot of stuff going on that I have nothing to do with, of course, you know, the world situation and the climate change and the weather and the job and all the rest of the stuff that goes with human living. When I identify myself with that, I'm playing around in my language world, and the only freedom I have from it is when I understand somewhere along the line, or somebody says to me, now, wait a minute, what has Betty occur in the first place? And I think, Betty doesn't have Betty occur. In fact, wasn't it Einstein or somebody like that that said you can't resolve the problem from within the problem? Well, then I can't look at the language world of Betty to figure out anything. When the fact comes through that all is infinite mind, not the brain, but an infinite intelligence that has the whole world working, has the earth in its orbit, has the stars in the sky doing what they're supposed to do, and so on. That intelligence that's functioning everywhere, when I can acknowledge that that's what's going on, that has Betty show up, oh, that's a whole different story. Because what that has going on is everything. All is infinite mind.
Mm-hmm.
And it's functioning intelligently. So how come Betty's running around trying to fix it? So when I can leave Betty alone for a few seconds and just acknowledge that, hey, you know, it's that old sentence that I've heard so many times, God's in his heaven, all's right with the world. It's actually true, you know. The God idea, the being, has Betty show up. That's what's running the show. So the more Betty gets herself out of the way, the more the show goes on.
And by getting yourself out of the way, it means that your attention isn't on you and your circumstances and all that. It's clear that there's divinity shapes our ends.
Yep.
And when you're clear about that, you're present to life and to who you be in a way that you're not when you're preoccupied with yourself and your circumstances.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. You got it.
So anybody has any questions or comments, you can type those into your comment box. We'll see them here and we'll take those up. And if you're liking this, you can put a, you can do the heart or do the thumbs up, whichever. And we appreciate all of that. So again, if you have any questions, please, or comments, please type those into the comment box. All right. So I want to back up to one thing, and that is the degree of ownership. So what is assumed to be my conscious awareness and your conscious awareness is language defining the degree of ownership we accept of the world we walk through. So what does conscious awareness have to do with degree of ownership of my world?
Well, if I look around me and I think of an experience actually with Margaret Laird when I was living there. It was the time when President Reagan got shot, and somebody came that had to talk to Margaret, and I brought them in. I said, Mrs. Laird, I'd like you to meet so-and-so. And she said, I can't do that right now, Betty. My president needs me. And I got a whole different feel for how I could view the world I'm walking with. That whole world.
Mm-hmm.
That's what needs me. It doesn't need Betty. It needs me. So just for a moment at a time, you get this perception that all is mental, that we live and move and have being mentally and always have. And we have this stuff to play the game with, and this is what it looks like. But what it looks like is not what it is. What it looks like is just what it looks like. What it is infinite intelligence functioning perfectly, looking like this. So then I don't have anything I have to fix. I don't have anything to fuss with. But just the acknowledgement of that fact for a moment has me really aware. And that awareness is not Betty. That awareness is of the fact. And then I'm free.
Yeah. All right. In Mind is the Athlete, you also say consciousness, actively self-aware, is infinitely identified.
Yep. Covers the whole waterfront.
Of what?
Of all the stuff that I look around and see the world I walk through.
Right. So consciousness, actively self-aware.
Yeah. Consciousness constitutes all that is.
Yeah.
And consciousness, actively self-aware,
is infinitely identified.
It would be infinity showing up everywhere.
Right.
And the thing that's valuable about infinity is there's no repetition, there's no duplication, there's no beginning, there's no ending. It's always operating at the standpoint of perfection without flaw.
Right. So it's always new.
Yeah, it's my being itself being.
Right. So you could say, take a little bit of a little detour here, but when you say conscious awareness and that's being, well, that is infinitude. The infinitude of being means that it's all infinity, meaning that nothing ever repeats itself.
And that infinitude, that action of being, is all there is to man. That constitutes the thing that shows up calling itself Betty.
Okay. So then you also say in your book, when understanding gives us the character and courage to believe only what the spiritual facts support, we will demonstrate the peace and joy and power that says of suffering, I never knew you.
That's right. Being itself, conscious awareness, right. Self-aware, self-consciousness.
So can I say then that when understanding gives me the character and courage. So if it's really, really, sometimes it really does take something to not fuss with the circumstances, not fuss with what's going on in your life, or not be dissatisfied in one way or another. And it does take courage and character to just allow the spiritual facts that what we know is true, and acknowledge that, and let the rest of it alone. Let the rest of it just be, without fussing, without worrying, without obsessing, without trying to manipulate it, but just allow it to be. And yet that's all that you're really saying, is just allow it to be. And it doesn't mean do nothing. It means that when you get to that place of just being willing to have it be exactly the way it is and exactly the way it's not, you're present in a way that has things you couldn't see previously show up intuitively to be done.
Yeah. It's almost like when you say allow it to be, what you're saying to yourself is allow the solution to show up. Get yourself out of the way so it can show up.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Betty has nothing to do with the solution.
Right.
The Betty is just the piece on the board. When
Yeah.
I move the piece 3 forward or 3 back, I own property, or I pass go and collect $200 or whatever. But the piece on the board has nothing to do with that.
Right. Right.
So it, yeah.
When you're present with all that, then you'll demonstrate the peace and joy and power that says of suffering, I never knew you.
Yeah. Problem? What problem?
Right.
Yeah. And it's important to, I'm glad you said when you were talking, that doesn't mean you won't do anything. You'll be very busy, but you won't be obsessed with human emotion involved in, I've got to get this done. It's got to be a certain way. I've got it all figured out. Leave me alone. It's not that. You can be busy. You might be writing a book or a symphony. You might be going out doing, other things. You will be very busy. It isn't that you're going to sit around and do nothing, but your doing this will be like coming from something that's done, seeing it show up.
Right.
I'm doing it and then it's done. Well, the doneness is what you're coming from, not something you're creating.
Right. Yeah. And Melinda says, I didn't know how to choose a lawyer, so many in my city. I was willing to let that be. Then a friend recommended one, and he was very responsive and immediately scheduled an appointment with me.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And as you allow that, that willingness to be and see it appear, let that be the authority in your life, rather than I'm going to do research and I'm going to find the right guy. You may do some and you may not, but you'll always have the right guy if you've allowed it to be, knowing that there's one intelligence functioning and it's all well.
Right. So in Christian Science Re-Explored, Margaret Laird wrote, truth creates the thirst to seek and learn, the longing to possess humanly the good that man is divinely.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like there should be some punctuation in that. Truth creates the thirst to seek and learn, the longing to possess humanly the good that man is divinely. So you're going to have to break that one down.
Well, being itself being gives rise to Betty.
Okay.
Now, that's not an accident. The being is the infinite intelligence functioning as all there is and all that ever will be. So it looks like the thirst to seek, the thirst to learn, the thirst to possess, all of it. That's what it's going to look like. But that comes from the being you, not from Betty's efforting.
Right.
That's primarily what's being said there.
Okay. All right. And she also says, consciousness is spirit. It does not become spiritual, nor is it spiritualized.
Yep. Don't have to do a thing about consciousness. Consciousness is fundamental. It's the stuff of which everything is made.
So all it takes is an acknowledgement.
Yes, a conscious acknowledgement.
Okay, so an acknowledgement.
It's not lip service. It's acknowledgement is not lip service, you know.
Right.
Acknowledgement is a recognition of the fact.
Yep. Okay. And also in Christian Science Re-Explored, she says evolution in the science sense means self-unfoldment and not growth in awareness.
Yep. You know, somewhere in one of Margaret's seminars, she talks about you can never be any more perfect than you are right this minute. You will never be any smarter or any, you know, you have it all right now, whole, perfect, complete. That's what's going on. And you call it, or I call it, Betty in the world she walks through.
Right.
You know, but anything that looks like an adjustment or a solution to a problem, or however your life shows up for you, is not really ever a growth in awareness, a growth in spirituality, a better whatever, a higher learning or something like that. No,
Right.
It's like you return to your roots. It's like what's always been there. And when you get Betty out of the way, that's what's present.
Right.
So it's already complete and whole and perfect. Yep.
Okay. So as people are dealing with being consciously aware, it occurs to me that being consciously aware provides true power in your living in terms of dominion.
Yes, it is the power of your living.
And then anything else is being a victim of. If you're struggling, if you've got judgments, opinions, whatever, and you're trying to fix and arrange the furniture of your life, if I can put it that way, the circumstances, trying to make something happen, all that kind of stuff. And it's where you're coming from in it, because you're going to be busy. There's things you go for, you know, and all the things that I've done, I could be doing the same thing, just like they say, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. And I'm thinking that there isn't anything. It's a shift in being willing, maybe a shift in acknowledgement of the source, but you could be doing all the same stuff.
Yep.
So
is all in where you're coming from?
So it's all in where you're coming from. So is it? It's really, if you acknowledge source and you're clear about it's all perfection functioning and all is infinite mind, all that stuff. If you can get with that and be willing, then you might still do all the same things, but it won't be with the anxiety and the worry and the frustration. Instead, it can be with joy. Can I say that?
Yes, but that all sounds like kind of a fix-it machine.
I know, but I'm just saying that it could all look the same, except for where I'm standing is the only distinction.
That's true. That is absolutely true. It is never in what's going on with the human picture. It's always in where you're standing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, basically, that's part 2. What's to come in part 3, Mama? Next week, Betty. I should call you Betty. This is my mother. I should call you Betty.
Well, I didn't review next week's for you to tell you a summary, so I can't tell you.
Okay, but we're going to do a part 3 on this.
There seemed to be more to say.
Right. There's more to say, I suppose. So we're going to say more next week. So same bat channel, same bat time, 7 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Pacific. And we will see you next week.
We're all through for this week? I was just getting warmed up.
That's it. That's all there is. So now you get to save it for part 3.
I got it.
So stay warmed up. All right.
Okay,
We'll see you next week.
thanks.